all, it's Emily Rand with ESPN Esports. I am pleased to be joined by Team Liquid jungler Broxah. Just to start off, this has been probably the weirdest offseason that I've seen in League of Legends history, just due to extenuating circumstances. So, as a European player who was kind of stuck in North America for this past offseason, what was your offseason like, and what is Team Liquid's kind of setup with social isolation going on still?
My off season has been quite an experience to say the least. Quite a crazy one for a lot of different reasons. It has been long as well, way longer than usual due to us missing playoffs. There's been the pandemic going on, so I haven't really been able to experience much in LA. I haven't been able to have anyone come visit me because there's no flights, and
Oh
the
no.
entire situation at first was pretty tricky and a little mentally draining, but eventually it actually turned out quite all right, I would say. It's a bit weird being stuck over here throughout the off season, but at the same time I ended up turning it into something positive. I had a lot of time to spend with all my close ones all of a sudden throughout the split. Like, I have no free time available, and all of a sudden, I have time to talk to everybody at home. Got to do some streaming, which I don't have too much time for either, and just make the most of it, really.
You described last split as your unluckiest split ever. How are, like, obviously there have been roster changes, there's been a lot of changes to Team Liquid. How are you going to kind of take what you learned from last split and apply it to improving as a team this split?
Honestly, last split, or this past half a year, I've learned so much about myself, really, and I've learned so much about dealing with difficult situations and kind of overcoming them, and trying to grow from them rather than having them drag me down. And coming in from the outside onto the team in the middle of last split, it was pretty tricky to figure out how I wanted to approach things and how I wanted to get start adding my own touch onto the team. But now it feels like, after a lot of thinking in the off season, a lot of us have found ways that we can change the team in a positive way, figure out how we can improve individually and as a team. And honestly, I'm just super excited for the next split to begin.
I talked to Jat about this previously. I listened to a bunch of your interviews from the latter half of last split. And one of the things that you kind of both agreed on was the hesitancy that Team Liquid had in their play style. How, I guess, just generally, I feel like this is something that European players say a lot when they come over to NA. Like, teams are really, really passive. So where do you think that comes from? And then how is Team Liquid going to try to overcome this for summer?
I think part of it might be kind of a team culture thing to an extent. Team Liquid has always been known, not only last split, but especially also the two previous years, known as kind of the passive and slow macro team, playing this kind of old school, really slow macro oriented style. And now in Spring Split, that style wasn't really too available anymore, and we slowly had to start pushing towards a bit more aggression, not necessarily going all G2 or LPL style, just fighting all the time, but at least balancing it out a little bit. And getting there was a bit of a tricky task. But now we've had some more time to look back at our games and see many of the opportunities we missed out on. Try to discuss like what our team mindset is and how we can improve this, because I think it was a big issue that we were so hesitant to make plays, and we were just all pretty afraid, really. Like, I came into the split after watching the first games of the spring split from home, and I looked at the games, and I was like, why are we not fighting here? Why are we not fighting here? Why are we not taking this fight? And then eventually I kind of started doing the same thing, and I ended up being too passive as well. And now I think we're all aware that this just can't happen anymore. Like, the meta has changed so much the past years, and whenever someone makes a mistake, if we're not ready to punish them, then it doesn't even matter if we if we play against the best team in the world or the worst, like if we don't punish people for making mistakes, we're not going to win. And we really need to make sure we step it up and actually just play our own game rather than theirs here in the next one.
So looking at what we've seen from the LPL thus far, obviously they're kind of always aggressive anyway. But one of the things that has popped up is a lot of these scaling jungle picks. So we've seen more of, I guess, farming until team fighting picks. Like we've seen the Echo, we've seen the Nidalee pop up. We've seen a lot of Trundle, which it doesn't necessarily fit in there, but is, you know, an LPL staple alongside the Lee and the J4. How do you think the current jungle meta is also going to affect how Team Liquid plays?
I think the current jungle meta is really interesting, and I've honestly been pretty happy seeing some of the adaptations happening in the jungle. There's definitely been a lot more farming than we've seen in the past, which generally isn't my favorite, but at the same time, some of the farm-heavy junglers like Nidalee, Graves, Olaf, for example, they're also pretty strong in the early game, and they have a lot of tools to play aggressive. And often, when it's more of a farm-heavy jungle playstyle, it also enforces teams to play around the jungle in a different way, which I obviously am confident enough to believe that we can benefit from. I hope I can take advantage of that and then, you know, secure some wins for us. But I feel like it's a pretty good jungle meta. To be fair, there's this farm-heavy style, but there's still some tanks available. You can also play gank-heavy junglers. We saw a bit of everything in the mid-season cup with, you know, some junglers still pulled out the Lee Sin, for example, who kind of requires to make some early game plays in order to keep up with his farm-heavy junglers, right? And even that pick still paid off once in a while. So I'm pretty happy with the current meta.
You can pry Lee Sin and J4 out of the LPL's cold dead hands. They're never giving it up. The last question I wanted to ask is just because Doublelift is obviously known as being a really strong voice on every team he has been on. And in his absence, I was wondering how team communication is going, how much of a voice you have in plays, and just generally what the post Doublelift era looks like for Team Liquid thus far.
Most of all, one of the most important things for me and that I'm trying to help create right now is for a team to be really flexible. I don't want Team Liquid to be considered this team that can only play around the bot lane anymore. To be fair, I don't think that was really true for Spring Split. If it comes to it, I probably played the most around Impact, but generally speaking, if we look back, Team Liquid has always been known for playing around bot lane, and if playing around bot lane doesn't work, they would lose, right? And now I want to push the team forward and make sure that everyone can carry. If I give someone a lead, I expect them to be able to close the game out, and this is something we're working towards. I'm trying to be vocal and really help make the early game work, and more than anything, rather than having one main voice. I don't necessarily think that's what it was like the previous split either. I think we had quite a few really vocal team members, including myself, but rather than having one main voice or main shot caller, everyone needs to be able to speak up and be able to take part.
Okay. Well, all the best for the coming summer split. And for more League of Legends coverage, keep it here on ESPN Esports.